Aloha mai. Ooh, was that too loud? Aloha. I'm Terry Nakiani, and we're going to start on time. Thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's a rainy night. In fact, I was told it was going to hail sometime today. And you all did come, and I really appreciate it. And hopefully everyone else can come here safely. I am from UH Hilo, and we organized this forum/workshop so that we could have our government agencies, regulatory agencies, come and give some of their plans for cesspool conversions, water quality, and it's a 2-day come together and put our heads together. So tomorrow we start again tomorrow at 8 o'clock. A little housekeeping. Out the door, this exit door, we have the restrooms. Outside, we have some coffee, water, and some refreshments for you if you had to come here quickly and didn't eat. So just come and eat some fruits, coffee, and water. I'm working together to put this forum with Rhiannon, and we're going to start. So I am affiliated with Penny Defense Fund, also Kelkaha Action Network, and I'm going to turn it over to Rhiannon.
Terry is doing so much, and this event is a reflection of what she does for the community and really her aloha ainas. I'm so happy that you've all joined us here. I'm going to turn this off for a second
and see what it sounds like if I'm talking with my voice. Do you want this or regular voice?
Mike.
Okay, just checking. I'm the logistics person before we get started. So thank you all for being here. Every single person who's here matters, and I'm so grateful that water quality matters enough to you that you will come out in the middle of this weather to talk about it. So we have some really wonderful special speakers tonight. We're going to get started with our County Department of Environmental Management Director. His name is William Kucharski, and he's going to talk to us about cesspools, about wastewater treatment, and some of the issues that I think people have questions about. And this is a statewide issue. It's a particularly challenging issue for the Big Island because there's so many cesspools here, but it is something that many communities around the state are confronting. And actually that's why I'm here, because I work for an organization called Viola Waterkeepers, and we are with the community, meeting with people, talking to our government officials that have this important kuleana, like cesspools. So we have some very important people in the front row right here from Honolulu. Thank you so much for coming. They know a lot about clean water, and they're the experts. So when we start to have community questions about cesspools or about specifically this transition that the state is planning for us, then we have people who can respond to those questions tonight. Tomorrow, the format is a little bit different. We're going to be hearing more from people in the community that have projects on the ground. Erica Perez is here. We're going to hear from Coral Reef Alliance. We're going to hear from Lauren Roth tomorrow about bioremediation, especially in the area of wastewater technology. We're going to hear from Dr. Maria Haas about bioremediation using oysters. And we're going to hear from Dr. Carlberg, Dr. Richard Bennett about water quality monitoring and the things that we need to know about what's happening on the land. Because there's not really water quality issues in the water. The water's perfect. What we're doing to the land is causing all of this stuff to come down, and that's why we're here to learn about what we can do maybe differently in the future. And I, for one, will say that I've seen in my short life a change in how we're starting to handle and I don't even like the term environmental management, because whatever that means, humans can't really manage the environment. Clearly, we're not doing a good job. But in, I think, the spirit of caring, I really honestly think times are changing, we understand more, and it's time to integrate what we know now to do things differently in 2018. And that's why we're here today, because we all believe that there's a future for our children, for the children of Teokaha, for the children of Hilo Bay, this entire island in our state, that no child should ever have to be afraid to swim in the water. No parent should be afraid to put their child in the water. And waterkeepers all around the world have helped communities change non-swimmable waters back to swimmable waters, back to fishable waters, back to drinkable waters in some cases. And so 347 waterkeepers around the world are dedicated to 8 communities, fishable, swimmable, and drinkable waters. And so in about a year and a half ago, we opened the first waterkeeper in the state. And so hopefully this is just the first of many community discussions about water quality that we have on the Big Island. We're here in Hilo because there's some urgent Hilo issues, and that's what we're going to hear about today. But there's certainly many communities that are facing similar issues, and we want to be able to support them. And one way that we can support them is doing really good in one community and leading by example for the others. So we're here to support the great choices of our managers, our resource managers, our government officials, and supported by the scientists, including Dr. Tracy Wagner, who's here today. She's going to talk to us about her research about water quality. And then we're going to close this evening with Dr. Lauren Pang, who's going to kind of wrap it all together. So with that, I think I'll just do some last minute announcements about outside. This is where the restrooms are located, so go up this door in the back, or you can go up these stairs in the back, whatever easier for you, and then please feel free to get coffee or water or anything outside. We have some refreshments. Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to our director, Bill Kucharski. Mahalo.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a Friday night. I want to introduce myself, Bill Kucharski. I'm the director of the Department of Environmental Management for the County of Hawaii. The department is not a regulatory agency. We do not set standards. We meet standards. We're, in essence, the operating company for the solid waste that is disposed of and handled in the county, and the wastewater systems that are licensed and permitted by the state. We are the operators. And so just wanted to come out and deal with that issue. I'm here and multitask. Can you all read that okay? Can you see that? What I'm going to go over tonight are essentially 3-4 major issues. I'll give you a little bit of an idea of the sewer systems that are currently located in the county, going more closely with what we have here in Hilo. Then talk about Bill 125, which requires the closure of cesspools by 2050. I'll go over the report that the Department of Health has put out, and I will describe the priority areas that were in that report that established which cesspool areas needed to be covered first, what they thought were the most critical. And then I will go over a little bit on Act 132, which was passed after everyone figured out that the 2017 Bill 125 had really significant impacts on the state. And the legislature put together conversion working group that is attempting to be able to go through and say, we have a lot of problems and questions, how can we answer those, how can we transition this? And so those are it's the basic outline of what we're going to do. Oops. Go back. This is what I call my high school prom picture. Those little red dots are not pimples, but they are the only areas in the county that are sewer. We have 6 major areas in there that go through. We obviously have Hilo, and we have Kona, and that's it. That's what we have. That's what is sewer coming out. Just to give you, if you blew up the Hilo side, this is where the areas are sewered. I will tell you that on the entire island, we have only about 100 miles of sewer. That's not a lot of sewer. And so everywhere where you don't see a red line, people are on what we call an individual wastewater system. These systems are approved by the state. The county then goes through and will allow, when somebody has a building permit, they come in and they look at the state. The state says you can have these kind of systems. If you meet those standards, then you'll get a building permit. And so for many years, we've been doing pretty much just cesspools because they're cheap. They're the cheapest thing you can do. You dig a hole in the ground, and you line it with brick, and then you dump all your waste in there and walk away until it doesn't flow anymore. And when you take a look at that, you'll come down and Act 125 was passed in the 2017 legislative session. And it states that cesspools, that's the name of it, prior to January 1, 2050, every cesspool in the state, excluding granted exemptions by the Director of Health, etc., have to be upgraded or converted, and it says septic system or aerobic treatment units. They've since taken out the aerobic units, just said an approved system from DOH. Or you have to upgrade or be connected to a sewage system. It then goes in and it talks about what the Director of Health, the issues that he can grant an exemption. And if you take a look at the 4 main reasons there, small lot size, steep topography, soils, accessibility, cost is not in there, if you notice. And it says they're not limited to this list, but this was the priorities that the legislature felt were important, and that cost was not an issue is why we went to our next slide, pretty much. I think we jumped a slide. Do that. Go previous. Part of that Act 125 required the Department of Health to provide a report on the status of the cesspools in the state. And this was submitted in December of 2017. And the Department of Health has come out on various issues to try and deal with this and explain this to the people of the state. And they're working very hard to educate everyone. We go to the next slide, too. Thank you. These are the numbers, and you see Hawaii County up there, housing units 82,000, cesspools 49,300, and cesspool effluent they estimate at 27.3 million gallons per day. Not per year, per day. To give you an idea On the sewage treatment plants that we operate on the Big Island, we put out possibly 6, maybe 7 million gallons a day of highly treated wastewater. Cesspools do not treat the waste, so you're getting essentially raw wastewater going into the environment. Only one thing that I know for sure, water flows downhill. The only thing downhill from us is the ocean. And it may take 50 years, it may take 100 years, but whatever comes in hydraulically is sometime is going to wind up in the ocean. In order to prioritize all of those cesspools, there were 4 priority areas that were defined, and the Department of Health used these. Priority 1, we don't have any. There's a couple, one on Maui and I think one on Oahu, and that's something that's directly affecting the drinking water well. The potential to impact, not significant risk, but a potential is a priority 2. We have one of those on the Big Island. We go to the next. Potential impacts 3, we have 4 locations that were identified as priority 3 for potential impacts, and the rest are impacts not identified. This is the breakdown of the 5 areas that were identified. Cal is 91 square miles, 9,300 cesspools, and you can look at all of these numbers that come down. Kapoho was an area 3, but that has been reduced as a cesspool issue. And unfortunately for those folks, but that's why the line is through there, but we're still left with 4 priority areas. To give you an idea, if we just come in, just take a look at Kapoho. That's 220 cesspools that were there, and the estimated 0.12 is 120,000 gallons of waste entering the ecosystem every day. That's what the 0.12 means, 120,000 gallons a day. Next, please. This is a picture of the cesspools and where they're located across the county. I don't know whether you can see the fuchsia. I don't know why they use fuchsia to identify those areas, but they have, and we have Cal, Kapoho, we're in coming up with Hilo, then we have coming up on Kailua, and a little area up there. We can happy to talk about Puako. And those are the 4 priority areas. When you take a look at those 5 areas, the amount of area of the island that comes up to is 200 square miles. It's only 5% of the Big Island. It also happens to be half of the total the size of Oahu. Right? It's about a third of the size. The 24,000 cesspools in the priority areas alone are more than that's 50% of the total in the county of Hawaii. But that's more cesspools than are on, it's more than double. Maui and Oahu, but combined it's about the same. They have 100% of their cesspools, and you're just running what we have in our priority areas, which is about only half. Okay. They estimated, the Department of Health estimated that the cost to convert these cesspools on the Big Island is going to be about $500 million. $495 million. How did they get that number? Take that number of cesspools, multiply it by 20,000 a lot, and you come up with that number. Now, this number is not related to any cost to the county. The county does not regulate an individual wastewater system. This cost is 100% for the homeowners. If we come in and we sewer everybody, and you have to connect to the sewer, this number is probably not going to change all that much. And so what we have is a really, really big problem. And the issue as to how we're going to deal with that is one of the things we're going to sort of address. But I will tell you right now, I don't have the answer to this. Not yet. But we're working on it. From our perspective, we're looking at things like how do we get waivers? There's somebody sitting in Wandale with 80 feet of soil and 50 miles from the ocean. Does it make sense for them to have to close a cesspool? I'm not sure. I don't like cesspools, but that doesn't mean that because I don't like them that they should all be closed. But we're going to have to come up and evaluate whether the groundwater is vulnerable. All of the issues that we're going to have to deal with are issues that are real issues. Funding. What the legislature passed was if you made a conversion from a cesspool to another wastewater individual system, they would give you a tax credit. Well, guess what? If you don't owe $10,000 in taxes, then your tax credit is not going to help you very much. And I think there are a lot of people around that wish they had enough money that they had to pay $10,000 in taxes. So how are we going to deal with that? How is the state going to deal with getting these closed? And alternate methods of finance is needed. We're looking with the legislature, and I'll go into their attempts with the working group to come up with some answers to that. And the other thing that we have to worry about is if we say you have to close the cesspool and you don't have the sewer, what do you change it out to? Do you just put in a septic tank? If you're in your shore, and the folks from Fulco you will discover have determined that a cesspool, if you're sitting right down on the water, next to the water, is not much better than a cesspool. And so one of the issues that DOH is dealing with and we're dealing with in the work group is what do you change? If you don't use a cesspool, what do you change to? And there's no real answer for that right now. Next. So in this last legislative session, Act 132 was passed, and this was done to come up and say, look, we've realized that we've got a lot of questions that we haven't answered. We've caused a lot of grief for a lot of people, and so let's try to address these questions, and we're working on that. So there are about 15 specific things that this work group is supposed to do. I've sort of summarized them. Get a statewide plan, propose legislation on how to fix some of this, evaluate technologies. If you're going to say you've got to close your cesspool, you should be able to say what are you going to replace it with. How do we provide financial support? When I say we, that is a global we, meaning this is a state function, but it also comes down to the county, and the mayor just looks around and said, the state might have done this, but everybody affected in this county are in this county. And so we have an obligation as well to try and provide support. How do you prioritize, how do you deal with the priority classifications? And I will tell you that this will be important because what we're hearing is that they were wanting to get the high priority areas closed before 2050. could be a direct impact depending on whether this priority goes up or down, or they say priority 2s have to be closed in 5 years or 10 years. That's going to be another impact that's not developed. So how we prioritize these classifications is important. And there may be some technologies that are okay in one location but not in another. Just as a point, Hawaii was the last state to ban cesspools. Every other state has banned cesspools. And cesspools, the individual cesspools for your house is not federal. The feds don't care. EPA doesn't care what you do on that. That's a state issue. And so the state has allowed this to go on, and it was not malicious. It's just a fact. It was just banned in 2016. So go into the next one. The members of this group, I've given you a list. For me, they have the wastewater agency, so I represent the county on that committee. We have Erica is on the committee, and this is an area that we're looking at and trying to work to come up to answers to some of the problems that have come up that everyone identifies and says these are real issues. How do we deal with them? We're meeting about once a month, and if we had a good administrative person that set the meetings up, we might meet more often, Erica. She volunteered. So, there is a report that's due to the legislature in December of 2019, an interim report, and 20 days before the 2021 session, they're going to have a final report that's going to include findings, proposed legislation, all of those things that are going to come in. So the state does recognize that this is a major issue and are putting, they put about $1 million into this for different ways to help us move forward. So the state is not ignoring the issue. The county is definitely not ignoring the issue. But this is not going to be a 2-meeting solution. We're trying to come up with ways, the group is trying to come up with ways that we can sort of solidify the technical solutions that are going to solve the problem. The worst thing that can be done is to come in and say, A is bad, put in B, and then 5 years later say, oh, my bad, another 20 for you, that was not good either. So when we come up with a solution and DOH says you haven't changed, we want to make sure that what is changed to is appropriate and will respond to the environmental needs of wherever the facility and the individual place is going to be. Again, we're looking, there's new technologies coming out. There's some very good technologies that are moving things forward. And I'll tell you, everybody that says, well, 2050, that's 32 years away, that's not that long. And I can tell you that impacts are coming. Mortgage companies are now looking at homes and saying, well, if I give you a 20-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage and you have a cesspool, well, maybe I'm not going to lend you the money. And the financial community is already looking at this as a liability towards the property owner. So the fallout from all of this is that there are going to be a number of ramifications that are going to come down, some that are not anticipated. And again, as I said, there's a possibility that the state's going to be saying, and we've heard this comment from some of the folks, that the higher priority areas need to be done sooner than 2050. Particularly the area ones are going down, or should be anyway. Next. Okay, the county issues. Just as a point of record for those that are in Keokaha, there's this, the Department of Health has indicated that community has on their records approximately 230 cesspools. And so this is an area that's going to affect this community very strongly today or tomorrow, but it is going to affect the community. We did meet on the mayor, when all of this was brought to the mayor, he said we have to do something, and we set up a meeting with UH which for Keokaha, you know very well, they're your landlord. And we're coming in and saying, look, this is an issue that affects DHHL not only here, but it affects Hawaiian homelands across the state. This is something that we're engaging them early to try and get them to raise the issue with the work group that the issue of Hawaiian homelands is something that, particularly on the financial side, needs to be addressed explicitly. We did have a meeting, we're going to meet again, we just have not set a meeting, just that's information. Now, when we take a look at things in the Keokaha community specifically, you all suffered many years, took the burden of wastewater for the entire community of Hilo. And we got a new plant in the early 1900s, and I'll run that on the next slide. A little bit of history. The original, well, I have to say the original, the formal plant had been operating for many years, and it was what we call primary treatment, which means you screen out big hunks of stuff and the things that don't dissolve, and the rest you just dump into the ocean. And in 1988, that's what was done. And not to make too big a point, but that's what's done in Honolulu. They have primary treatment. They also have their shelf is drops, and they have a bigger mixing zone. But then in 1988, EPA said you have to fix that, so we went in, and in the early 1900s, I'm still having a hard time finding the exact dates that construction started and the existing Hilo plant was constructed, but that's a secondary treatment, and it treats the water down to levels, and it has an MPDS, which is a federal sanctioned federal water quality standard permit. And we did take some samples of the discharge water, and they were in the front seat of my car. So, importantly, I don't free them. But the main issue is, for me, that the county treats wastewater that it receives, and the treatment that it gets may not make everybody happy, but I guarantee you that if you want to compare it to seepage from a cesspool or from a septic tank, you'd be much happier with the treated water. And again, with that, I will just take any questions that anyone has. Again, my goal is just to inform. There's no judgments anywhere. There's no gotchas anywhere. This is just to say, this is what happened. This is what the law said. This is what we have to do. And the impacts I'll leave for other folks. Okay. Yes.
Actually, I was going to ask what Hilo area, but it's obvious that it's a county-wide problem, so I'm curious what the capacity is of the systems that we have on the island now are.
Yeah, we can treat in the, well, Kealakahe is a 5 million gallon a day, Hilo's a 5 million gallon a day, and the others will come in at about another 400,000 or 500,000, so about 10.5 million gallons a day right now.
And with this this group that's studying this issue, what's the target for this? I mean, for myself, I would be pushing for sewers everywhere, which would mean the capacities that you have now would be far lower than what you needed. And so, as you were indicating earlier,
Thank you. As you were indicating earlier, at these smaller plant sizes, we're going to need to increase that on probably 10 or 20 times to get what we need. So, any idea on sizing?
Right now, for example, Honolulu, or City County, Honolulu, they have about 80% or 90% of the island sewer. Some number like that, Maui and Hawaii. Again, we have somewhere in the area of 10 or 15%. Our cost for sewers, that $450 million that we saw for the septic conversion, that probably wouldn't sewer Gal 90 square miles. That's going to be about 300 miles of sewer line, and it's costing us about 1.8 million a mile. So we're up in the 400, 500 million. When you take a look at that, our problem will not be so much the treatment plant, but it will be getting the sewage to the treatment plant. That will be equal to or greater than the cost of the facility. And we can upgrade our facilities. Kealakekee will be looking. You're required by EPA when you get to 70% of your design capacity, then you need to start looking at expansion of that facility. So in Hilo, we're about 60%, and we're about 45% in Kealakekee. But we could double that easily in either place with the sewer. I guess the short answer is I believe we're going to have to sewer considerably more, particularly if you're in an area that has a small lot. If your lot is less than 10,000 square feet, you can't put in a septic tank. It's contrary. Your lot has to be at least 10,000 square feet. And so there may be some areas that's why I have more than that, but there will be a lot of areas, particularly if you're in any plantation areas that are 6,000, 7,000 square foot lots, and developers are going to smaller lots. So there are a lot of different issues that are going to come in, but it's going to take a lot of money, a lot of infusion of money. So that's the best I can say. That my job is easy in a lot of ways because money can fix it. There's some areas that money can't fix the problem, but this happens to be one that I think it can.
I just wanted to know how many pumps does the county have to run this sewage to these facilities, and how old is the pumps? Or are there going to be new ones to be pumping all the new hookups to the facility?
The answer is not really simple. If you take a look at the number of pump stations that we have in Hilo, we have 4 pump stations. Generally, we try and design our systems so we use gravity flow, but particularly if you're in a coastal area like you're flat, it's really hard to always go downhill. And so then we have to collect that material and pump it up to the plant. But again, it depends on what the location. We have maybe 6 in Kona. Because there's a longer distances and a little flatter, but we try to design those without pumps wherever we can. Right? Not Lake Upahala, we're designing those without pump stations, that will be all gravity fed, as an example.
How old are the pumps that we have now?
I can't tell you exact age, but generally you get a 20 to 30-year life on those pumps, and we check those. We will be replacing the cooler pump station in Vietnam. That's the oldest, I think that's the oldest pump, and that's going to be replaced here. We have the designs and everything out for that. So, but I can't tell you how old each one is, but one of the things that's happening, just to give you too much information, EPA is visiting with us. They have a $600,000 grant to help the county put together what's called an asset management system, which will come in and evaluate and record when all the pumps were put in, what spare parts they need, how often they should be maintained, and I'll probably be able to give you a computer printout in 5 years. I can't do it today.
In one of your earlier slides, you referenced discharge, and you showed that Hawaii County, with the number of housing units, has a discharge of about 27.3 MGD. And my question is, how and where are you monitoring the discharge? And then I also have a second question. I live out in Puna. We're on 1 acre lots. HPP has, over 8,800 lots. So we've got quite a bit of impact. And we have probably what could be a very significant artesian well or wells below. So we obviously want to protect this in spite of how much rain we do get. So do you think there could be anything in some of the technology that is available to have like microsystems, for dense populated places like HPP? So 2 questions.
The first question of how do you monitor the discharge from the cesspool is a simple one. You don't. There's no monitoring. There's no way you can monitor a cesspool discharge. That is an estimate of that the Department of Health uses, that approximately 550 gallons a day goes through each cesspool, is put into the cesspool. Because anything that goes in goes out. If that's not true, your cesspool doesn't work, it overflows, and you get somebody to pump it out. So we know what goes in goes out. So that's and that's part of the problem is once it leaves that cesspool, we don't know where it is. We don't know where it goes. It goes down the crack to where. There's no way of tracking that, really. And the second question I will say that the Puna CDP calls for sewering, and Sue, that will be the second building that I asked you for. The first building is already taken, but that is part of the CDP to sewer Puna. However, the question of are there small systems? Yes, there are some very good small systems that can be used. And they're run, depending on the flow, how many people are in the house, they'll still run you into the $20,000 range, 20, 30, depending what it is. And if you do use a sophisticated system, then you need to maintain that system. So there are ongoing operating and maintenance costs that are not also associated with the purchase price. But that's one of the things that the work group is looking at is what can you do? What small systems are viable for areas that are vulnerable to groundwater management?
I'll ask what I always ask you, and that is, could you tell us about some possible alternative systems, such as composting toilets and digesters and I've even seen something called Blue Watt, which is from England, and the waste ends up generating electricity. And of course, those are more used in third world countries, but might be something to start looking at.
There are a number of systems that you can use. One of the things that will minimize impact is if you separate out what's called the gray water, which is from your shower and not your kitchen sink, because that's organic. You have things that go down there. So the kitchen sink and toilets are called black water. And if you separate out washing machines and showers and bathroom sinks, and if they were separated out, you would get a smaller volume of material. There are systems that will take that and they use low water use that will, and you can actually combust the waste and come out with an ash, so it's totally waterless. All of these things, however, are systems that are a significant change from what the majority of the people have. And then we come in and say, okay, that's great, well, what do you do if you live in a condominium? How do you deal with it in a condominium? And so there are some answers that will work in some places and that won't work. Nothing will work everywhere. But there are a number of things, and the work group will be taking a look at these low water systems, recycle systems from the composting toilets into even the combustion ones.
Yes, I'm gonna take two more questions for Bill, but I have a question for you, and that's regarding the Working Group Act 132. Where can we, as community members, know who's on the working group and how were they chosen to be on the working group? Because this is a statewide working group. And do you have a Native Hawaiian traditional practitioner that is there?
The composition of the committee and the work group was set by the legislature. There is not, to my knowledge, a Hawaiian practitioner on that. And there was not a place, for example, Hawaiian Homelands was not one of the members. UH Hilo, they were not. But these meetings, I can say, are public. I can send you a list of the people that are on the committee. That's not a problem. The meetings are open.
There's actually a webpage that has been posted to Department of Health that have meeting notes, everybody that sits on the working group, the minutes of the working group, and stuff like that. So that is available, that's online.
That's no information.
So who do we talk to about the list and how can people participate, our community, and not just the working group? And do they disseminate information to the community statewide? Because, they're a working group that was financed by legislation. And I think they should find out from community statewide, what the impacts are, right?
One of the tasks is reaching out to all citizen groups and affected communities to get feedback. This is just, there have only been 2 meetings, so it's really just, everything is just getting organized. But the requests that you have are ones that we can pass on.
I'm going to take 2 more, Sophie
And I know, I can just go ahead and add on to that. I know that within the bill, it does say that the chair of the working group basically has the power, it's language that's actually in Act 125, 123, whatever it is. That the chair of that committee has the power or authority to be able to add to the working group.
That's great.
So I think that could potentially go to that charity request.
Right. I would at least think DHHL, some other, Hawaiian environmental groups. that could participate.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Pahala, and right now we're facing the issues of the cesspool, and I guess they're trying to fast track it in Pahala, and the community has not been involved. We barely get information. A site was already chosen, not even consulting the people in the area, they did an EA. So now we have to the 23rd to answer that EA, which is coming up next week. We had no time to educate our kupuna. The elderly are very frustrated because of the costs that they would incur, not only for the hookup of the cesspool, but we have to pay also to cover our existing cesspools. So the concern is a lot of the cesspools are lava tubes. So how do we fill that? This is added cost to the people. So right now in Pahala, they're very, very frustrated. We're trying to work together, and we know we need this, but the site that they picked is the wrong site in Pahala. It's right off the highway as you enter our town. Who wants to enter your town with a wastewater sewage treatment plant? There are archaeological sites there, there's caves, there's bones. Nobody came to the community and asked any of the kupuna or the elders who know better. They didn't even consult with our sewage manager who was there with the plantation for years. We need help in Pahala because they're fast tracking this. They want to converge people by 2021. And where's the money going to come from? So, it's more of a statement, and we need you guys' help. Whoever can help us. That's what I'm here for. We need your help. They need to move the site first and foremost. But you really need to communicate with the community. Poor communication, lack of communication, fast-tracking this, and we're not going to stand for it because we're talking about future generations. The decisions we make here today will affect my grandchildren, and I have 12 of them. And by the time 2050 comes around, I'm going to be in my 80s. So we need to make a difference now, and I need you guys' help. Whoever can help us. We're putting in for an extension. Hopefully we'll get it so that we can educate our community more. Give us more time. But it's more of a statement than a question. Thank you.
Bill, two questions. I can see Kamoho, of course it's gone now, but and Porco and Kona. But how did Cal get on the list? What's in Cal that's driving this? And the second question is what are you doing with your biosolids now? Because that's a big issue when we do central sewage.
Yeah, it was picked because there are some shallow drinking water wells there. Some folks have put in some wells, and the cesspools were deemed to be a threat to drinking water sources. That's why it was a 2. Biosolids right now are dewatered and disposed of in the landfill. Short answer.
And would she get her extension they're asking?
We're gonna give it to you.
Okay. Thank you, William.
Okay, I want to just thank Director Bill Kucharski one more time because it's hard to be up here on the hot seat. And he actually fielded those questions really well. This county, like many other counties, doesn't have all the money that they need to do what they have to do. And that's a very sad reality. At the same time, nor do the homeowners. And that's what we have, I think, our biggest challenge going forward. And so Waterkeeper's actually been working with the DOH for almost a year now, looking at financial fixes to this. There's something called Craft 3 Partnership in the Pacific Northwest. It is a combination of a nonprofit government agency and a bank. And they got together and they are using EPA revolving funds, being held by a bank to give low-cost loans to community members, because otherwise we will wait till 2050 for a lot of people to have the money to be able to address this problem. It's a financial problem, it's an engineering problem, it's so many things, you know, but aloha pahala, and I will be there. You please will get in touch after this. It's really important. Every community lining up to address this issue. We want to move it ahead, but we don't want to move it ahead to the detriment of the people, right? We want to help the environment, but it's a cost-benefit analysis, I think, unfortunately. You know, we have to do it smart. And so, with that, we have the amazing Dr. Tracy Wagner, and I'm so excited that she's here because not too much water quality data exists. That's the truth. I mean, the DOH really tries to get around monitoring, but there's only one person, from my understanding, who monitors water on this island, and there's a lot of sites to get around to. And so if UH can help, and they do, that's how we know some things about what's going on in the environment and really what's going on in the land. So we're going to hear that tonight, and thank you so much.
Aloha! Mahalo for having me here to participate in the Water Quality Symposium this weekend. Tonight I'd like to share some information about what we know about sewage pollution in Hilo Bay. But before I start, I'd like to provide some background information on sewage pollution. So what is sewage? Well, it's really a nasty cocktail of everything that goes down your sink, your shower, and your toilet. It's comprised of urine, pathogens, which are viruses, bacteria, protozoa, nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, feces, hydrocarbons, cleaning chemicals, and fresh water. So it's a lot of different things. And when we're talking about cesspools and septic tanks, aerobic treatment units, and even sewage injection wells from sewage treatment plants, the way that the sewage reaches the ocean is that the sewage leaches into the water table, and that groundwater eventually transports it to the shoreline, where it's discharged in shoreline springs or in benthic seeps on the ocean seafloor. And how do we know this? Well, we know this through dye tracer tests. So these are experiments where we add a fluorescent dye into the toilet of a home, and we look for it to emerge on shoreline seeps. This demonstrates the connectivity of the home to the shoreline. It also gives us a sense of how fast that sewage reaches the ocean from the home. And this has been done in several locations here on our island. At Kapoho, the travel time was 20 minutes from the home to a near shore tide pool. At Pu'uko, we've done experiments which have ranged in travel times from 9 hours to up to 10 days, depending on the location of the house and the underground geology. And then in Maui with the sewage treatment plant, this was a very big dye tracer test. The travel time took anywhere from 5 to 10 months to reach the shoreline. So what if you were to drink or swim in sewage-contaminated water? Well, you could get sick. And the likely illness that you would experience is gastroenteritis. So you would get a terrible stomachache and you would experience vomiting and diarrhea. But there are other pathogens that come in with the sewage that can also make you sick. Things like hepatitis A, salmonella, giardia, typhoid fever, cholera, all those things. So you definitely don't want to swim in water that has high sewage concentrations. So what's your chance of getting sick if you were to go swimming in sewage-contaminated waters? Well, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has established marine recreational water standards. And what they use are fecal indicator bacteria. These bacteria don't necessarily make you sick, but they're used to indicate the presence of sewage, and the other pathogens that come with it that are much more difficult to measure. And so the bacteria they use is Enterococcus, and the standard is 35 colony-forming units per 100 mil. If you swim in water with concentrations at that level, your chance of getting sick is 3.6%. Now, there are other bacteria that are being used to evaluate health risks. Another one that's under development is Bacteroides. This is a bacteria that is the most abundant bacteria in our digestive tract. And there are molecular tracers that are developed that can allow us to distinguish bacteria from humans from other animals, like cattle, pigs, birds, dogs, cats. So when we use those, we can figure out what the source of the bacteria is to the water body, and then develop specific management strategies to improve water quality. And they do also have a health risk assessment that's associated with Bacteroides. Again, at certain levels, you have about a 3% chance of contracting gastroenteritis. So sewage not only affects human health, it affects environmental health. And the most well-studied environmental impact of sewage is a condition referred to as eutrophication. And this happens when too many nutrients come into coastal waters. They cause the algae to bloom, both the lemur as well as the phytoplankton. And in some areas where we have coral reefs, it's been well documented that the system can shift from being a coral-dominated reef to one that is smothered with lemur. Other things that have been documented in coastal waters with reefs that are contaminated by sewage is declines in coral and reef biota, as well as increased prevalence and severity of coral and reef biota disease and infection. And up here, these are some pictures of lemur blooms that have occurred on other islands as a result of sewage pollution. In addition to sewage, Hawaii State has the highest prevalence of waterborne infections that are associated with recreational water use. Many of the pathogens that cause these waterborne infections have been documented in coastal streams and waters here within the state. And one of the pathogens that has been found is Staphylococcus aureus, commonly referred to as staph. And this has been found in streams, coastal waters, and beach sands. And this type of bacteria is saltwater tolerant, so it grows well in the seawater, and it also has antibiotic-resistant strains, which make it hard to treat because not just any antibiotic will allow it to clear up. And that's commonly referred to as MRSA. And it is known that staph and MRSA can be found in sewage, especially if it's untreated. So we want to determine whether there are these links between sewage pollution and these waterborne infections that we see commonly within our communities. Now, getting closer to home, we have a lot of cesspools here on our island. There are about 50,000, which is more than 50% of the cesspools statewide. And this is untreated wastewater that is eventually reaching our coastal waters. And Hawaii State uses cesspools more than any other state in the nation. And it wasn't until 2016 that the state banned the construction of new cesspools. As mentioned before, we were the last state in the country to do so, following Rhode Island, which did it in 1968. So what's happening here in Hilo? Well, there's almost 9,000 cesspools here, and the density is pretty high. It's about 41 cesspools per mile squared. It's the second highest density here on our island, and that density is thought to be high enough to contaminate groundwater, which then transport the sewage to the ocean. It's estimated that about 5.6 million gallons of untreated sewage is coming into Hilo Bay each day. Now, when I say that number, that doesn't really mean anything to me because I can't imagine what that volume is, but it's approximately the size of 8.5 Olympic-sized pools. So imagine that volume of water coming into Hilo Bay each day with untreated sewage. Another analogy is if you were to be sitting in your bathtub and you urinated, that's the equivalent of the level of sewage pollution in the bay. So what do we know about Hilo Bay? It hasn't been under the radar. It's been recognized as an impaired water body since the 1970s by the US EPA. It's on the 303D list of impaired waters, primarily for high fecal indicator bacteria concentrations. And that's thought largely to be because 60 to 70% of Hilo isn't sewered. Most of it's on cesspools. Now, the EPA, Hawaii State, Hawaii County, they would like to reduce the number of cesspools so that we can improve water quality and ensure that it's safe when we want to go in to the water to recreate. But it's really been, our ability to do that has really been limited by financial resources. And the other thing is that data are limited. We don't know where all the hotspots of sewage pollution are so that we can better target certain areas as priorities for working at first. So currently Hilo is a priority 3. This priority list was created at the end of 2017. So these are areas which are thought to have sensitive waters, and it's likely that sewage is coming in, but there's insufficient data. So I want to share what we know about Hilo Bay with regards to sewage pollution and tell you where we could improve our knowledge base. So oftentimes they measure fecal indicator bacteria. The one most commonly measured is Enterococcus. What we know in Hilo is that the concentrations of this bacteria significantly increase after rains. And the concentrations are usually 10 times higher than the statistical threshold set by Department of Health. So that's like a single sample maximum. So that's 130. We get concentrations up in the thousands after rain events. The other thing that we know is that the concentrations are fairly uniform in the bay. And if you've ever watched the storms come through and the rivers and how the bay responds, you know that a tremendous amount of water comes down the Wailuku River, and it pretty much fills the entire volume of Hilo Bay. And so you can imagine that it gets pretty uniform after these big storm events. But when it's dry, the water quality is pretty good, and oftentimes the concentrations are below the state standards. Now, Hawaii Department of Health measures a secondary fecal indicator bacteria. It's called Clostridium perfringens. And it's used because Enterococcus can be found naturally growing in tropical soils. So when we find high concentrations in the water, it's hard to know if it's from sewage pollution or if it's from the soils. So this second bacteria is thought to be more specific to sewage pollution, as this bacteria is only found in the gut of warm-blooded animals like ourselves. So like Enterococcus, Clostridium concentrations significantly increase after storms, and we generally get the highest concentration at the river mouths, so the Wailuku and the Wailoa. We also see high concentrations at the water quality buoy. That's within the Wailuku River plume in the bay. Now, it's important to measure fecal indicator bacteria because they have a health risk associated with them. But what they don't necessarily tell you is where those bacteria are coming from. So a way to get at whether the bacteria are from humans is to look at Bacteroides. So we did measurements of human Bacteroides in Hilo Bay. And 40 to over 50% of our samples, which were close to 300, tested positive for human Bacteroides. So these are all the different stations where we measured it, and that the percentage is the percent of positive hits. We generally got the most positive hits following storms, and we had the most positive hits at the river mouths. Now, what this doesn't tell you is how much sewage is coming in, and it doesn't tell you the health risk. but it's telling you that these bacteria are from sewage. Now, the other thing that we've been working to do is to visualize spatial patterns of these bacteria. We want to understand what are the hotspots of sewage pollution. One, so that we can better inform the public of where sewage pollution concentrations might be higher so that they can make educated decisions if they want to take the risk of swimming there. And also provide information on these hotspots so that potentially management actions can be taken to reduce the pollution levels. And so these are maps that we've developed for Enterococcus, using other parameters that are very easy to measure and that are correlated with Enterococcus. So using measurements of salinity, temperature, and turbidity, we've been able to generate these maps. And we also looked at how well they predict state standard exceedances. So our maps here are for Enterococcus. We have high flow conditions, so that's storms, and we have low flow conditions, and that's when it's dry. And our Enterococcus maps can accurately predict state exceedances about 64% of the time. We also made maps for Clostridium perfringens. They are better able to predict exceedances about 95% of the time. So this is just looking at the spatial distribution of the bacteria during rain events and dry conditions. Now, the thing that we're working on, that we've been trying to acquire funding for several years, is that we want to develop a real-time model that allows us to tell us in real time what the water quality conditions are so people can make real-time decisions about whether they want to go swimming. And we want to do this using the Hilo Bay water quality buoy, which has sensors for things like salinity and turbidity, parameters we know that are strongly associated with the fecal indicator bacteria. So if the buoy can measure those parameters in real time, we can make real-time estimates of what the bacteria concentrations are like, and people can publicly access that data, and then they can make decisions about whether they want to go swimming. And we hope that eventually we'll be able to get funding to develop this model, and that this would be publicly accessible and hopefully help to decrease health risks to water users in Hilo and possibly elsewhere in the state. So just to wrap it up, what we know about sewage pollution in Hilo Bay is that the fecal indicator bacteria concentrations get increased following storms. They tend to be higher at the river mouths. For Enterococcus in particular, the concentrations are 10 times higher than state standards following the storms. Again, remember that if you go swimming and the concentration is 35, your chance of getting sick is about 3.5%. But the concentrations following storms can get up into the thousands. Also, greater than 40% of the samples that we have collected in the bay at 8 different stations, they tested positive for human Bacteroides, demonstrating that the bacteria that we're measuring in the bay are derived from sewage. And then we've also been developing maps to help us visualize where the hotspots of sewage pollution are within the bay. And then lastly, we hope to develop real-time models to make real-time predictions about water quality in hopes of reducing human health risks in our community. Mahalo for your attention, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Could you go back to the slide where you had the map?
Sure.
Of the Hilo Bay, where it shows the high flow versus the low flow? There. Could you identify those areas along the shore that are where the red parts are coming out?
I don't have a pointer, but I'll try to do it justice. So this red dot closest to the marker, that's the Wailoa River. And that tends to be a hot spot where we consistently get high concentrations. That river is draining the most residential portion of our town, so I'm not surprised that's where we tend to get the highest concentrations. The other one, which is a little bit further over here near the shoreline, that's the Wailuku River. And consistently after rain events, the concentrations are very high. Now, whether it's, I think it's probably a combination of sewage and soil.
Have you ever gone up the river to test at different points in the river?
We have, and so the concentrations tend to be highest at the mouth, but that's a cumulative effect of the whole watershed draining to that point. When we get closer to Pi'ukunua, the concentrations go down, and if we go further up into that watershed, it's even lower.
And the area where the sewage treatment plant is, could you locate that on the map?
Well, it's not on the map because it's further in this direction along Keaukaha, and that's definitely one of the areas where we need more information. But what I can say is we've kind of pieced together collecting information over the years through student projects, and the concentrations that we've measured there, when we have measured, haven't been as high as what we've detected in Puuko, which is on the other side of the island.
And will the buoys be able to detect levels of heavy metals or
No, so
chemicals?
there's a set list of parameters those buoys can measure, and we found that some of those parameters it measures are highly correlated with the bacteria. So we think that that will be a fairly cost-effective way and rapid way for assessing the water quality, because when Department of Health goes out, they collect a water sample, and 24 hours later they get the answer. We can make at least an estimate of what we think it is in real time.
And there was a question I had at the end of the other gentleman's talk where he was saying that the solids were taken out of the sewage treatment plant and sent to the dump. So is there any plans to monitor that, because the dump is not lined? And so all of the rainwater that goes through the dump has waste coming out somewhere. So I was wondering how we're going to monitor that.
I will pass it on to Bill, because he'll be better able to answer that question.
Just when I thought I was out.
Sorry.
We have regular monitoring, groundwater monitoring that's required by EPA and Department of Health all around the Hilo landfill, and we have not had an exceedance of any of the standards. And I can't tell you why, but we don't have them. EPA made us go back and resample 4 times one year because they couldn't understand the numbers, but we don't have concentrations that we can measure in the groundwater from that landfill.
My question is, why is it whenever it rains really, really hard, that's the time when you have a spill that goes into the bay and into the river, the Wailuku River? And there's no time, it seems like, when there's spills, when there's no rain, or little rain. And is there any evidence of photographs in re-engineering designs of things like that of how to correct it? You guys are coming down really heavy on people with cesspools and people who are putting stuff inside their Haley's own cesspool cracks and things like that, but what about your information and facts to show the public that there is indeed some repairs being made, and photographs to show the actual sewage or spillage of overflow going into the river and elsewhere?
Well, I'll answer the first part and then I'll give the rest to Bill, but in general, I'm sure, like on Oahu and on Hilo, when it really rains, the pipes, usually the water's inside the pipes, But when it rains, water comes from outside and can get into the pipes, creating a tremendous amount of pressure, and they get concerned about the pipes rupturing, so then they do raw sewage releases.
And so why don't they put that information or photographs inside the local newspapers? They did on Oahu when there was a giant pipe spill happened and went into the Alawai Canal, and I was there. And there's a number of people that got staph and died. And so...
Well, I know the story about the one gentleman who did pass away. He was particularly sick. He had a compromised immune system, and he was pushed into the canal with the raw sewage, so it was an unfortunate situation. I don't know that a regular healthy person would have gotten quite as sick, but I'll let Bill answer.
I believe they have a pipe that's about 10 feet around, and it goes about 10 miles somewhere else other than into the Alawai Canal right now. And so what do they do about Hilo in upper sewage areas?
I can show that. We don't have systems as large as Honolulu. Some of our biggest lines are maybe 24 inches.
You're dropping the bomb on people with their cesspools.
I'll attempt to answer the question of why these numbers go up. If you have a cesspool and you have a great deal of rain, that rain is going to seep into the ground, into the cesspool. That is possibly going to overrun. There is very little that will explain the higher numbers. We don't have that many. We don't have feedlots up here. We don't have anything. And we don't have sewer systems up there that are of any consequence up in that area. And so the only source that I can point to and think this maybe will answer the question is the fact that you have systems, home systems that get flooded, overflow, and that waste is brought down with the rain into the river and then out into the bay. But I don't have information on that.
What about all
That's
the
my call.
structures that are around Canyon Drive, the Hilo Hawaiian, the Naniloa?
Any time that there is a release from the county system, we make a report to the Department of Health. We clean up if it's in the area, we post the area. And if there are systems around that are not the counties.
But where do they go? Where does this stuff go?
If you get a
On a daily
release,
basis?
if you get a release from one of our systems, we will give an estimate of that. We will post and we will monitor the area according to the standards of the Department of Health. Where it goes into the bay if that's where the break is or that's where the release is. There are other sources other than sewers that would contribute to waste flow into the bay.
But where does it go normally?
Normally it gets pumped to the sewage treatment plant, treated, and then discharged properly.
How far is that?
Depends on from where we're talking, but we're over, the plant is over in Keakaha. Yeah, we have probably 15, maybe 10 miles from the longest section. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but most of it's gravity flow and then it's pumped up into the plant.
Back in the day, there was a sewage plant right down in Coogee Bay.
That's correct, and that was what I had brought, that is no longer there. We're growing oysters there now.
Where did it go?
It went up further, Nauka, next to the airport where our plant is.
Didn't they have a pipe that went out into the ocean before?
They still do. Because about 3/4 of a mile outside into the ocean, outside the breakwater.
So, I'm so sorry. We are running a little bit over time, so I invite anybody who has other questions to come down and come and speak to the director, because we skipped our break. So I would like to give people 5 minutes to just stand up, walk around, have a snack, have something to drink, and come back. We have one more speaker and then some more Q&A. But if you have specific questions, please come to the front. Thank you.
Okay, all those in, we're gonna start again.
Okay, we're going to get started. And I just wanted to actually start by saying that we're going to start tomorrow at 9. So earlier there was an announcement about 8 o'clock. We'll probably be here earlier. We'll definitely be here by 8:30. So if you want to come and talk story, because this is a great talk story opportunity, we'll have coffee and water and some snacks for people who want to come early, ask questions and get ideas going. But we're going to move on tonight with our presentation. To me, this is our keynote speaker. This is Dr. Lauren Pang. I'm going to let him introduce himself, actually. Let's see if anybody else. I'm just going to close the door. Okay, so I came from Maui before I went to law school. So when I was on Maui, I was a nonprofit executive director of an organization called Malama Maui Nui. We worked really closely with the county and the state, with the Department of Health, cleaning up dump sites, cleaning up things that would lead to dengue fever. And at that time in my life, I had the great honor to work very closely with Dr. Pang. Dr. Pang is on Maui, but I feel like he's here for our whole state, and really for the whole world. And that might be true, because I'm going to let him introduce himself, and I'm going to ask him to share his educational background and work experience before coming to DOH, because I think people would love to hear that. Thank you, Dr. Pang, for being here.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for staying. I don't have PowerPoints, so you can turn that off. I'm going to get my eyes operated this coming week, but until then I might get real close. Nothing personal. I gotta see what I wrote. I wrote some things because Ray told me what the topic was, and so I kind of read pretty extensively on this. And then, I heard the two speakers, and so I'll modify it a little bit, not much. My background is I was born and raised in Honolulu. In those days, you didn't go outside of Honolulu. You don't really travel that much because we didn't have money, and Honolulu wasn't so bad, so you didn't have to go to the neighbor islands to have a good time. Honolulu wasn't so bad. I went to Princeton University. I graduated with honors with a degree in chemistry. Then I wanted to go to tropical diseases. So I went to medical school in Tulane University in New Orleans, and I got a master's of public health as well. They immediately exchanged me. They said, "Now that you study tropical diseases, why don't you go?" So I said, "Where are we going?" They said, "You got choice, Cameroon or Northeast Brazil." So So I checked off Northeast Brazil because, I don't know, that was supposed to be one of the epicenters of diseases. So 1 year in Brazil, infectious disease with them. Couldn't speak Portuguese, so at first I did autopsies, then I was a little better. So they assigned me to the isolation unit where everybody was in coma. Then I was pretty good. They assigned me to the ER and to I hated clinics. I always thought, those guys are really sick, but they were. Then I got picked up by Walter Reed Institute of Research and the World Health Organization, 5 years in Bangkok, working Southeast Asia for malaria. Then I joined the World Health Organization 3 years, mostly in Africa, working malaria. And I went back to Brazil 5 years, this time in the Amazon, Western Amazon, chasing infectious diseases, especially malaria. Then I went back to Bangkok, and I worked the Southeast Asian zone, all the way from Bangladesh with cholera, typhoid fever, all kinds of Campylobacter, waterborne diseases, and then malaria. And finally, in the year 2000, my parents were getting old, and I thought I would come home and spend the last few years with them. And I've been on Maui ever since, since 2000. So that's kind of my background. If you want to say, well, what have you been doing? I don't want to brag. I consult recently for the last 5 years for the US Congress. We vote on what to fund medical research. We vote on $350 million per year. We've been doing this for 5 years. And then I still consult for Doctors Without Borders. All right. Oops. I'm supposed to kind of give you a summary or where we stand with this. First of all, this issue is not new to me. We were told, like you guys were told, you better put in those you better take out those cesspools. But wow, that's new. I thought we were grandfathered. And the highest priority, the first speaker said, was someplace in Honolulu, in Oahu, that lagoon that we used to swim in. And then Kula. Kula is Maui. Those guys are upcountry, and they were furious because we're the highest priority. And we got to make our move by, I don't know, it was supposed to be last year. And so we had this huge meeting, about as big as this room, and it was standing room only. And the people were really upset on both fronts. The process, or the lack of information or sharing, like you're just telling us now. I thought we were grandfathered. And then the science. Can you connect the dots? So when we do when we do remove the cesspools, never mind the alternatives right now. Are things going to get better? Well, what's wrong? And can you prove to me that what is wrong is because of the cesspools? So we quickly identified a little different condition, right? It's way out country Maui, and they claim that the stuff goes downhill, the cesspool liquids. And that somebody downhill wanted to drill a drinking well. Holy cow, he was like upset. He drills down. But it took such a long transit time that any germ died. Okay? No germs. That was never on the table because it took so long to die. Not like, right to the water in Hilo Bay. So they said, well, we got nitrates, those chemicals. Okay. Well, thank God we don't have heavy metals. Thank God we don't have exotics like those petroleum products. Yes. Thank God we don't have arsenic like in Bangladesh. But we got nitrates. Okay. So of course the Maui people said, well, whose nitrates is this? Cesspool nitrate? Or fertilizer? Or cows? Or wild deer? Whose nitrate is that? But they had convinced us pretty well that it was nitrates from the cesspool. They did the marker studies, and then they did isotope studies, and they thought, oh gosh, it is our cesspool. Okay, so we kind of said, all right, we're sorry we did this, but you guys allowed it, but we're sorry our cesspools are putting this in. But then came the alternatives. You're going to drill a well right here. Why don't you get the water from over there? Because that water is clean. They had drilled wells and found no nitrates. In fact, the guys with a cesspool had nice water because they don't drill right below them. they top it off above. So that's where we stand. It is our cesspools, it is nitrate, it's not germs, but can't you guys just get the water from the next gully? Well, that's where we stand. Okay, I'm trying to figure out who pays and who doesn't. That's my specific example of why I'm here, but I have to tell you a few things I want you to remember. Now, you might say, this is weird, he's telling me all these different things, but he's not telling me connecting the dots. Yeah, sometimes you just can't connect the dots. I'm going to tell you stuff that I think is true, and then someday, maybe we'll connect the dots. All right. First of all, somebody told me once, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. That means you don't really know everything, but you know enough to try to make a move. Well, that's kind of dangerous. Many times in medicine, what we thought was going to work was actually paradoxical, or made things worse. And it even wasn't paradoxical once you figured out what you were really doing. So let's just leave it at that. If you believe that, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. Let me show you how really little we know. There are 4 systems generally accepted that are so complicated that no matter what you know, all due respect to the previous speakers, it's relatively very little. And so your application of what you think is very dangerous. So what are these 4 systems? One is genetics. The human genome, I don't know, 5 years ago, there were 100,000 human genes, now there are 23,000. Oh, that's weird. But then, how come we have 100,000 proteins? Because one gene makes multiple proteins, damn right it does. If you put that in college, you got an F, but it's true. We really don't know genetics, and it will manifest when the fetus is born, because all that genes has to make something, a baby. Once you are born, yeah, you got your genes, and they kind of manipulate and change as your environment challenges you, but it's nothing like a newborn baby. So when you tell me birth defects and weird stuff, I don't know, because that's the manifestation of genetics. The next complicated system is the brain. We won't go into that. The next complicated system is space beyond the planets. It's quite, I took 4 years of math and physics at Princeton. It's quite amazing what they do. You know, wow, I don't know why the galaxy is there, let's just put in dark matter. And it's being challenged now, string theory, whatever. Doesn't matter. And the 4th thing that's the most complicated of all is the environment. So when you tell me, oh, I got this, we're just going to do this, and it's going to do that, I don't think so. We have messed up many times. So if you really believe that a little bit of knowledge, a very little bit, relatively, is very, very dangerous, then be careful what you do. What does that mean? Be careful. Well, let's try to be flexible, but if you make a boo-boo, can you please stop it? And can you recall all the stuff you put out? Oh yeah, we do that all the time, really. Then what is with little fire ant? That was brought in, that affected the ecology. It didn't shut itself down, and it's like hopeless, at least on big eye. What is semi-slug, rat lung disease? That semi-slug is invasive, okay? What is ta'ape? I'm just staying away a little bit now from human health. Ta'ape is a fish they brought in. A fishing game brought it in, and we're supposed to eat it and like it. But okay, not that good. But it eats the eggs of our beloved fish, kumu. Wow, what a mistake. What is the prawn brought in 1965, Fish and Game? Infested our rivers and streams because it got out of the aquaponics. It is the most invasive species of all if you dive the rivers. Which is the next topic. I dive the rivers. Everything in the river is gone when the prawn is there. The native pie, the iba, the o'o, everything is gone. You mean it actually eats these species? No, it brings in a virus which will cross-infect. Okay? So I'm telling you, we don't know what we do a lot of these times, and you can't pull them back. The prawn is uncontrolled. Next thing I want to bring up is not so much on health, but the environment. Because I am worried about the environment when you mess up your water. So I dive spearfish for 40 years. I began diving Hilo and Kapopo and in 1987. And in 1987, I was real, not happy, but I understand now. I saw the reports of how this used to be, Hilo Bay. Because when I started diving, it was terrible. And I was diving looking for fish, and I promised somebody a fish breakfast. And so I dove in the day, and I couldn't shoot a damn thing. And I never saw such gray, sterile water. My friends and I call it barren. And I didn't know what was going on, so I chalked it up to fresh water. Like, hey, a lot of fresh water, maybe no fish. So I came back at night. If you can't catch fish in the day, come on, you can do it at night. At night, I only caught like 3 fish. And I'm glad these people I was supposed to give a fried fish breakfast to, half of them couldn't make it, they had other appointments. I mean, there was barely enough to go around. But I chalked it off to freshwater flow. Little did I know that 1987, you already had bad pollution in Hilo Bay. Now, I've dove since, because I bought a shack up in Volcano 15 years ago, and we scrounge and fight for every little fish, but it's fun, and I'm not that worried about getting sick. I'm probably immune by now, and I'll treat myself. But I can tell you, all things being equal, breakwater to breakwater. You dive at Hilo breakwater? I don't see much. You dive at Kapalui breakwater, Maui. Not a lot of cesspools, not a lot of rivers flowing. Oh, that place is loaded. And we have the same number of cruise ships. So just parenthetically, I'm very concerned, like the guys in Kyokaha, about the environment. That's interesting. So that's my little bit argument about the environment. Next, sentinel. We have a term in public health called the sentinel marker, that the canary in the coal mine. When the canary gets sick, I think the human shouldn't go in. So everything has a sentinel, a little warning, a little marker. The speaker said it might be enterococcus. Okay, when the enterococcus goes up, stand by, you're going to sit. The financial guys have a sentinel. Well, when the interest rates double, get ready for the mortgage rates to add it. So everything has a sentinel. Okay, so what's the point? I will contend that in your water environment, like polluted water, the marine ecology is the sentinel before you're going to get messed up ecology long before you see a whole lot of human disease. Now, why is that? And it's called the rule of the 3 B's, BBB. Yeah, I just made this up for Ray. B, and this is really quite interesting now. Were you born in it? If you were born in contaminated water, like a marine ecology, whoa, you got messed up stuff. You're either going to see defective stuff, or it's not going to be there at all. Before you see turtles with 2 heads, you're not going to see turtles, because the fetus is the most effective. Next, B, are you bathed in it, swishing around all the time? Well, the marine ecology is, but not humans. I mean, we go paddle and we go swim and we snorkel, but it's not like a marine ecology. And finally, is bioaccumulation. Some of these things will pass, like an infection, but some, like heavy metals, the petroleum products, the change in the mutations of the fetuses of the coral or whatever it is, it's not going to pass. So you got these, I claim that the water is, the marine ecology is in the water, born in the water, accumulating in the water, and we just visit. If any of you know my background, I claim quite the opposite for air pollution. When pesticides are in the air, humans are really born in it, immersed in it, and bioaccumulated. And the water isn't. Some of the stuff drifts into the ocean. Depends on the level, but you get the idea. Whose is the sentinel for what? In polluted Hilo Bay, you watch the ecology, but if you weren't interested, you're not going to see anything. You might not be interested to say, hey, look at all those defective fish. By the time you see defective fish, there won't be enough fish born to see defective fish. You get the idea. The sentinel of the marine ecology is the birth, not the defective stuff. Well, why do I see defective turtles? Because they weren't born in it. They come into this ecology and then they get the stuff. I will bet you if they're born in it, they don't even make it to this big. Anyway, okay, next. If we know the sentinels, we should monitor them? Yeah, okay. So let's monitor them. All right. Now, I would like to focus on the nitrates. I was reading the reports. I heard your speech about the terms. But what really seems to affect the ecology here is the nitrates. Even the nitrates coming out of human waste from leaky cesspools. Okay, so let's just assume the busted cesspools, or the cesspools that even aren't busted, are leaking a lot of nitrates. I looked at all the maps because I was trying to contest why Maui is the highest priority to fix the cesspools. And then I saw Hilo, you guys number 2 and number 3, but man, your area, your groundwater, your stuff is loaded with nitrates, and I will bet it's from your cesspools. Okay, now, where else are we going to go with this? Well, what would you like to do? Would you like to stock the cesspools and what, put in sewers or something? Sewers aren't magic, because I think the other speaker said this. There's plenty of stuff in the sewer now. And so on Maui, we did the sewers, water treatment, and we collect all the sludge, and we pile it up for people to use for fertilizer. Holy cow, your stuff grows, but there are reports of heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, and thank goodness we don't have petroleum products. But there's no germs, okay. So our sludge from the sewage system is suspect. Oh, then I heard from Keaukaha that for the longest time, you guys, Keaukaha, had the sewage treatment plant there on the other side of the breakwater. And I also heard, which is a little odd, that that's where your landfill dump is in Keaukaha. Is that right? Or it was closed? All right. Now I want to change the subject a little bit. I don't mind, as a scientist, I published like 6,000 papers, saying I don't know. I really don't know because you're messing with the ecology. And I cannot guarantee that if you fix all those cesspools, things are going to change. Why? Because you still have the breakwater, Okay. I can tell you that the EPA, because we messed with them a lot, but we had high chemical levels. We thought we would dilute it out, and the clean aquifer to the dirty water, whoa, the EPA said, wait a minute. You hear that joke? The solution to pollution is dilution. Not with the EPA. You got to address the source. And so we even tried to say, how about we address the source and dilute? No. So, there was talk about opening up the breakwater, allowing the flow to come in. That would kind of sound okay. You dilute out Hilo Bay's pollution, but the source is still coming down. Well, that sounds okay to me, except for one point. If you open up the breakwater to allow the flow, okay, some guys complain about the tsunamis and all that, but it's staggered breakwater. If you open it up to fix the flow in Hilo Bay and you start swimming in there, more guys are going to come to Hilo, and you're going to have sewage outfall or a septic tank at low water table. It's just going to more and more people come. It's kind of like the homeless. The more you take care of them, the more people will come. So that's like the 800-pound gorilla that I can never answer. The more you clean it up, the more people come in, and you have a problem. But I believe that there was actually a solution. I saw this. And this is based on Keaukaha. For years, they had sewage outfall. And people said, hey, what happened to NIMBY? Not in my backyard. That's interesting. You put the thing here, we fixed it now. But all those years, your stuff was wrecking our reef and whatever. We don't even know what it did. It's ecological. So how about we'll put it someplace else? But if God moved the sewage plant from Keaukaha and moved it to, I don't know, right across, I don't know the street names, but right across the college, you would have NIMBY here. How come it's here? Everywhere is NIMBY. And they're going to say, hey, it's not Keaukaha versus Hilo. Keaukaha is part of Hilo. So we just put it there. We have to put it somewhere in Hilo. No matter where you put this, people don't get mad. I'm not, but then that's very interesting. That's absolutely correct. We face this all the time. So why doesn't everybody just take care of your own waste? So we don't send it here, you send it here, I send it here. Just take care of your own waste. Well, that's exactly what we try to do with cesspool. You have your waste and it's here. Of course, it's going downstream. You get your septic tank and it's here. Okay, we hope not too much goes. But there is an interesting thing called the compost toilet. It has come a long way. You cannot criticize it without having passed the compost toilet test, the last publications in the last 3 years. The compost toilet is beyond the icky factor, the smell. You separate the urine, you separate the stool, not because of the volume, but because in a liquid medium, urine or flushing, the bacteria that decomposes the stool doesn't live. So they separate it. And the stuff decomposes quite quickly, the solid waste, and you vent it and there's no smell. And then you use that stuff because it gets 160 degrees as your fertilizer for your garden. So you take care of your own poop, you recycle your own compost, and this has been done. It was developed by the Lawrence Livermore Berkeley Laboratories. It has been applied in Haiti. Haiti did this because their waste is right on top of their waters, their streams, and it's going into their bay. They have quite an experience with this, and it's done in Marin County because of water is precious. They can't keep flushing the toilet. So they go to this compost. How much does it cost? The stuff I read said $2,000, for the system, you got to install it. For, I don't know how this is true, but they said 3 adults and 2 children. So maybe mother, father, and one of the parents. So that's interesting. I think people should consider that. I mean, you really should. Everybody's got their own thing. You got your own thing. And it's better than sewage treatment center, isn't it? Because the sewage has all the curbside stuff, got all your antibiotics, got your heavy metals, because somebody threw in the batteries, got the petroleum products coming off the road, and you have to stop that heavy metals and all that stuff. But if it's your own stuff that you're going to put in your own yard, or give it to your own uncle, then you're not going to put heavy metals and petroleum products and stuff, and really. So it's kind of like responsible. It's your thing, so take care of it. So it's not so odd. And I consulted with people, we don't have to name drop, except these people were from MIT. And they said, yes, do you need help? They call it it's called a fine intervention. Sewage treatment plant, I don't know why you guys. A separate, you. Put in your composting toilet and let's see what happens. That is, fine intervention is also septic tank, $20,000. Fine intervention was cesspool. But they said that you look at Haiti, you look at Marin County, you look at the specs on this, it seems to be very, very promising. And I think I will leave it at that. Oh, one more thing. This is very important. My recent work is in bang for the buck, cost benefit. So let's say you got 2 different interventions. Okay, septic tank, okay, versus compost toilet, okay. Well, it's real obvious if a compost toilet is better and cheaper, but what is not better but cheaper? Well, we'll figure that out. But so far, it came up today. Somebody said, hey, how come Pahala got moved up to the list of fixing your cesspools? That's an bang for the buck. But the buck is not, how is your pollution? It's, the outcome is reduce those cesspools in the cheapest way. And it will, you know, Pahala, all these guys are together, the cane feels there's nobody. If I had to reduce cesspools, absolute number, the cheapest way, I would go right to Pahala. Because you put in the sewer system and you get all it close together, that's bang for the buck, but your target is absolute reduction of cesspool. It is not quite health. Like, where does the Pahala cesspools go? Why? It goes all the way down to the coast? Are we drilling new wells and polluting our own well? So when your outcome is a target, because somebody said you better reduce those cesspools, then I'll find the cheapest way. But when your outcome is really health, that's something different. Okay. I think I'm on time. I'll leave it at that. Any questions? I don't know. I'm going to moderate who points.
I can talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to know your opinion about hunters not allowing to hunt pigs because of the watershed. How does urine from a pig or waste go 4,000 feet down below to the water table? That's what they use as an excuse for no hunting, because it's a watershed. And everybody where they live at the population with all their cesspools is below the forest where this water is supposed to come from. Is there a way of keeping hunters out of the forest? Because that's been there for a long time, the hunter and the pig. This watershed just drove up. What's happening?
Okay. I started the talk with, I don't know much about a lot of things, and I'm not afraid to say I don't know, but I'm willing to look. So suppose we open it to hunters, and I measure the bacteria counts in the stream. If they're cleaning or washing up in the streams, I can see the point. But if the streams are clean, it's kind of like you say, what should we do next? Should we go where it rains and the stuff washes into the stream? But don't animals normally die and wash into the streams? So I am willing to look and measure and see if there's a difference. Because sometimes the hunters, they kind of do pollute the stream. I mean, the guys I know, we ask them to stop doing that. And then things are okay. But you kind of got to look at each situation. Now, I mean, it's some kind of bad hunters. You remember the guys poisoning the prawns? And they said, well, they're invasive. Holy cow, I mean, they're poisoning every other species in the
You
stream.
can't use one bad example
That's
to
correct.
generalize everybody else.
That's correct, but we will look.
Your statement wouldn't make any sense.
We should look to see how much bad examples there are.
I just look at them, how do they acquire property. It's always
Yeah.
been science against natives all the time. They don't coexist, they're just one way
You are right, we should look. I'm willing to look.
before you make laws.
Sure.
But the laws.
You're right. You're right. I mean, if someone can connect the dots for me, then I'm willing to support this.
I just wanted to ask what the university is doing as far as new students that are coming in and the graduate students. I know in Houston, Texas, Houston University made a big difference by inviting the graduate students to get school credit for doing things for the environment and helping solve community environmental problems. So I wonder if University of Hilo is going to or is offering them for the students now.
Sorry, I was giving the mic to her.
Yes, I can speak that. So we teach a lot of water quality techniques in our laboratory, so in the marine science department. So we teach students how to measure bacteria. We have them involved in different projects in different communities where we're making those measurements. We do senior thesis projects where students can do independent projects on a topic, and also train master's students. So there's a lot of student training. There's also the Surf Rider group is becoming more active in Hilo, so that'll be a community science organization. So there's lots of different kinds of training happening at different levels. within the community.
And that's great, but I'd like to see more, so that the students, especially graduate students, could go out and do something for the environment or get involved in some community effort or legislative effort. And just by simply filling out what they're specifically doing and get another professor sponsor to be able to give full class credit for that. And that's what Houston University had done, and it was amazing that in a few years they've done so much for the environment and for their communities, and they do a lot of art and recycling and things like that.
Well, I would say we try to do the best we can with very limited resources. And a lot of our students who've gone through our program, either at the undergraduate or the graduate level, are instrumental in a lot of the environmental organizations within the state. So I can only speak to some of my students, but 2 of them are in the Department of Health now. So both within Hilo and on Oahu. So we are starting to populate those organizations to try to make a difference with environmental quality.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor.
Where's the mic? Okay, so let's actually go sort of starting from here in the blue and then in the green and then right here, number 3.
I actually I converted voluntarily one of my properties to a large capacity septic tank when the law first came out in, 3 or 4 years ago, and it cost me $22,000. And I also now live and have a farm where I use composting toilets. They're very effective, they're great choices, I think. The biggest problem that other people say is that they just don't like emptying them, which to me is not a problem. The question I have though is for new building permits, there are some problems in getting permitted for composting toilets or gray water treatment or coming up with alternative plans. And I'd like to hear from the state on how they're going to make it easier for people to implement these alternative systems.
Okay, state, UH. I'm going to give this to you, Mark. This is Mark Tomomitsu from the Department of Health, wastewater, right?
So, for composting toilets, probably we would have to revise our rules to properly administer it for home settings because, like Mr. Kushowski, director, did an excellent job in his presentation covered homes, dwellings have backwater and gray water. Backwater being kitchen wastewater and from the toilets. So it's almost impossible right now to have a purely separate system where even if you separate the toilet wastewater, that you still would have to have a septic system to accommodate the backwater. And the gray water system, you still need to have 100% backup for periods of rainfall, so that would go to the septic system. And right now, our rules aren't set up to address both compost and separating out the backwater, gray water. So to the point where everyone thinking that you can leave for the use of compost toilets, how our rules are set up is not set up to do it in that manner, if you follow what I'm saying.
So how do we amend those rules to make it easier for people to do that? And then just another comment is Ogden, Utah has an awesome treatment facility where you guys should go to Ogden, Utah and look at their treatment facility for sewage. They collect their sewage, rotate it through different piles, incinerate the solids, and within 3 years, they give it away free to the community for for compost, and people have been doing it for years, so go to Ogden. The other thing is, there are a lot of like Korean farming methods where you can take your own urine from compost toilets, ferment it, use it as fertilizer. You can compost your own solids and use that for fertilizer. You rotate it through 3 years and it can be composted. You can use gray water discharge systems using reeds and bioremediation. And so I just want to see our state push more towards changing these rules so that it makes it easier for the individual to assume their own sovereignty for everything that is occurring on their property and their land and their families. Because I think if people understand what is at stake and we take our sovereignty back and be responsible for our own selves and our families, then the environment problem will be resolved.
So one of the major issues about compost toilets is the solid material. See, the manufacturers say that material is stabilized, you can then apply it, but that's not true. The material that's been sitting in the composting unit has been probably processed, stabilized, but the last part of the material is not stabilized. And unfortunately, in the world of regulations and protection of public health and safety, just that one bit would say the whole batch is not safe. And there's also the federal 503 rules regarding the use of biosolids. And if you want to make it to a Class A type sludge, in regards to land application and things, there's all the type of pathogen requirements, metals, to be addressed. And if you want to do Class B type solids, that's stringent requirements, but the whole part is to make it safe. So if you do land apply it, that kind of concern doesn't exist. So that's the hurdle in regards to rule amendments for compost toilets in a home setting, where you don't really, in general, most times, you don't have that much space to do all of this.
We have to keep it short though, okay?
Okay, so the thing that is interesting to me is that we have all of these federal standards at these levels, but we don't do those same things for example, Ocala Dairy, where they put out all of the waste from these dairy farms in huge pools and then dump those whole things. And so that's another issue. I would like to talk to you later though.
To keep it short.
Well, the short answer is that agricultural and concern of the waste is different. Besides human, where you have human pathogens versus animal has pathogens too, but in general they say that pathogen doesn't make the jump to human.
So getting back to composting, if there's devices where you can heat up your solids, separate your liquids, and move your solids into ash, and put them off in the wind if you want to, or put them in the ground. A good example of that is dog poop on the deck of a yacht. It just turns into dry compost. So another thing too is the Y valve system. Having a Y valve system that wires your washing machine water out into your garden space, or your sink water that comes out of your sink, and then you're just basic compost from your foods and vegetables that you don't want to discard, and separate that and put that into a system where it just dries. You can have fertilizer.
We started this discussion with the fact that cesspools were a problem. We then addressed sewage treatment plants. If we have a cesspool, why can't we have a compost toilet? It is in the home, it is in the land of the property owner, it is not a civic function. Any response to that? If we can have a cesspool, all we have to do is change the rule and say you can have a compost toilet. And I understand your problem with the effectiveness of compost toilets, but I think that's a separate question than whether or not we could use that technology if it is improved sufficiently.
I don't quite understand your question.
You don't have a rule now that allows compost toilets. Can't you make a rule?
No, we do have a provision of rules to allow compost toilets, but the issue is regards to also addressing the other types of wastewater and plumbing. So the part is normally if you have a compost toilet, what people would do
For the solid material disposal is take it to the landfill because they don't want to do the testing to ensure that it's either Class A quality or Class B quality.
Okay, let's go back to the first question. We want to get rid of cesspools. There's more than one answer to that question. One is composting toilets.
Okay, so I'm addressing composting toilets.
And they're not as bad as a cesspool. They're an improvement. It's much cheaper. More people can do it without major investment.
Well, the part is, when you say cheaper, you're not looking at the part where there's other wastewater that you also have to accommodate in the dwelling setting.
You can separate the wastewater.
Right, so you still would have two systems. You're gonna have two systems. It's not just compost system and you don't have anything else.
You have to engineer the whole problem.
Right.
I'm an engineer. What I do is engineer things.
Right, but I'm saying the cost.
You say no.
We're talking about the cost.
Yeah.
So you can have it.
You're going to spend $20,000 or you're going to spend $7,500.
Well, no, the part is if the alternative is for compost toilet, you still have to have another system to accommodate the other wastewater generated from the dwelling. It's not just only compost toilet. You would still have to have a system to accommodate the kitchen water and the gray water.
Right.
Right,
So
so.
it's still cheaper. No, I would guarantee it's cheaper.
I wouldn't necessarily say so,
I'm going to ask the enforcement agencies, the DOH and the county to close their ears. A gray water system, including the kitchen sink, because I wouldn't put kitchen sink water into the cesspit or the septic system because of oils and things like that that can have detrimental effects to the system. But a gray water discharge system is so easy to do. And let me tell you, the bananas love it. They live on it. You do it subsurface. You don't do it surface because then it would be exposed to dogs, cats, or people coming in contact with it. But if they're not listening, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm doing gray water system for everything except the toilets. Only the toilets flush into the cesspool. This system is totally passive, totally inexpensive, and very easy to do, even in a small lot. Because, you know, we do get drought here once in a while. We haven't had it recently, but we do get drought. And to have that gray water system working 24 hours a day on the plants that want to be wet, like bananas, it is so easy and simple to do. I don't think it's even worth any further discussion. The question, Dr. Maui Uka. The problem seemed to be the nitrates going downhill with possibly the groundwater. What is the difference between a cesspit discharging through the walls of the cesspit or the septic system discharging through the effluent field as far as those nitrates still discharging downstream?
Okay, the difference, as I understand it, is a septic tank allows more bacteria to degrade the nitrates, and now it binds up the plants and all that. We can live with nitrates bound to plants, but we can't live with nitrate flowing through the system. If it goes down, you lose the bacterial system, it's not anaerobic, it just tunnels through. I want to answer this question here. If, from what I understand for the composting toilet, you separate the solids, the poops, okay? Now that carries a lot of nitrates, so that's out of the picture. The rest of the stuff, the gray water, the urine is not infectious. So, you know, it might smell bad, but there's nitrates in it. But I'm with you. There are a lot of people who say, put that gray water on the plants. I think Maui, a place with no water, starting to use it like that. So all that stuff is on the surface. Whatever nitrates it has, it's eaten by the bacteria, the aerobic bacteria. When you drive it down into the cesspool, there's no system to digest out that nitrate. And it really does flow where you don't want it.
I just want to say, you know, talking on all you guys, listening to the information and stuff, can you imagine in my town, Filipinos who cannot speak English? How could they even grasp what you guys are saying? We're coming down to 2021. We're going to be the first to converge. And I beg to differ, you know, I don't have degrees like you, and talking about health and then bang for the buck. But why worry 1950? Because psychologically, they couldn't kill the people before then for stress. And that's the biggest thing that's happening right now in Pahala, is the stress. And it affects the people health-wise. Not only do we have the chemicals from the sugar plantations in Brewer, we have the chemicals from the McNutt, we have the VOG from Tutupele. Now we get the stress from the county, pressuring us to do this, it's going to cost you this, added, not communicating with the community. So this is something for all you guys who are making decisions on Oahu and doing the EAs and this. You're talking about treating the water, treating the sewage, but you're mistreating the people. Okay, think about that.
Dr. Peng, Maui has this fantastic problem that we saw with the injection wells and all of that going into the ocean. But what I see here on the Big Island is they don't even take injection wells, they just dump the stuff into the ocean. That's sort of really polluting our whole ocean ecosystems. And I'm of the opinion as a marine ecologist that we should get rid of all of our ocean outfalls. Do you think that, what is Maui going to do now that their injection wells have been shown to indirectly just do in the ocean?
Yeah, long ago this came up, and it was shown that the transit time of the injection well was like, middle of just dump it in the ocean. It's found a tunnel that seeps and it tracks. So we were going to set up all the treatments, we were. But then the issue came up, even if you collect all the sewage and do all this stuff with it, and the water is clear that you put out, what you going to do with the sludge? If the sludge has the pollution, you know, the heavy metals, the petroleums, the pharmaceuticals, then we would landfill the sludge far away so it never seeps anywhere, and there's a liner to hold it. So, but since then, the composting toilets, see what they're doing in here. Tell me that it's not doing.
The injection wells don't only take the water, and what they found on Maui is that it's really the phosphates and the nitrates that are going out and causing the algae blooms and changing the whole ecology.
But you remember he said the water is coming out and it's pure, but it might have phosphates or nitrates. I mean, it's clear.
No, the water coming out of the sewage treatment plants, they're not clear. They just have EPA-defined limits on how much ammonia, nitrates, phosphates can come out, and they have limits on the bacteria levels too. They're not clear, they're not clean, they're still sewage, just at an EPA-regulated level, and it's going into our nearshore environment.
I'm kind of with you. I don't really care how clear the outfall is into the ocean. You can have clear water that carries phosphates, nitrates, and carbon, because that was a problem initially with our drinking water. Looked clear, but it was loaded with these three things that cause things to bloom. So, like I said, I don't think we really know what we're doing in the long term, with its constant outfall, and the sentinel marker will be screwing up the reef. And by the time you see that, too late. I'm with you on this, but I think the composting toilets are for Pahala. Okay, you know, they said, okay, let's stop that cesspool. And when they see the bill for the septic tank, I think Pahala should be a little pilot study. You guys, we're going to help you. We're going to put in this composting toilet, and we're going to see how you like it or how you don't like it. And we just try it. I mean, there's nothing like a little pilot study, but Haiti is way beyond pilot study. These guys are moving. Marin County is moving. We're kind of like waiting for somebody to follow.
So we're going to take 2 more questions. We're actually 8 minutes over, but I want to say that what's happening right now, although it seems very disorganized, is important because we have to have discussions. We can't just say, boom, we have one answer, it's septic systems, everybody upgrade to septic. That's not going to work. We already know that in high water table areas, septic will fail just like everything else. The truth is, like Dr. Peng started, we don't know the answers, but this discussion is helpful. It's uncomfortable, but it is helpful for us. And what we have to do is get the truth through working groups, through scientists, through UH studies, through DOH studies. And by the way, DOH is actually conducting a study that is going to be done in June of 2019 that is specifically geared to on-site disposal systems over drinking water areas. So we're about to find out what is the recommendation for a good system when you live over an aquifer, which is something we want to know for people in Cat. So Dr. Peng, he says a lot of things. Sometimes I think he comes from a different world, like planet, you know, I mean, a star. Because I can't follow a lot of the things that he's saying, but you're gonna go home, I promise you, you're gonna be like, God, that was all over here, and then I get this. Because really the truth is we don't know. That's what he's here to say, with all his degrees and all his information. He doesn't know, because there's not one person in the room that has the answer. But collectively, we're moving this forward. Because we cannot just rubber stamp across the state one solution. It's never going to work. So I'm going to take 2 more questions. I think it's you with the mic, and Kelly Campo, did you want to say something? If anyone else had a question, please. We're not, closing the door, turning off the lights. You can come down to the front. We're just going to take these 2 last questions for the group, and then come down if you have any questions after that. Okay, Mama?
Mahalo, Ray, that was actually a lot of what I was about to express too, so I appreciate that. It was more of a comment than a question, but I just wanted to thank everybody who was here and Terry for putting this together, people coming out, because it's going to be a collective effort and it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. So I could see how, downtown Hilo, downtown Kona, sewering makes sense, but if you're way up in the boonies, on an off-grid system, composting makes a lot more sense. So I know from talking to Erica that the advisory committee is looking at not just having one solution broad scale, but they're looking at the cost-benefit analysis for people in all different kinds of situations. And I also wanted to thank you, Dr. Peng, for your stories, because I felt like we had a really good range of background from the state, from the scientist perspective, and from a different type of community-based with a science lens. And I think that connection of direct experience in the community and science together is going to be where we find a lot of our solutions. And I really appreciate the way your brain works and pulling in the ecosystem connectivity and all of this. So thank you, and thank you for everybody for coming together on a really sticky issue. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask does all the boats in the harbor contribute to a lot of the problems that we had? The fishermen that got all their boats and yacht people and everybody else? I think they do more damage to the ecosystem than a hunter would do in the mountain. But you would look at the hunter and not look where you go dive and where you live, what the pollution is there by these boats. I did one boat mentioned that's in every harbor in Hawaii.
Okay, let's just assume that I don't know much about boats. But if we had the same number of boats, Lahaina, Kahalui, same number of boats, and I did her test for the bacteria, I don't know what I'm going to see. But if you say, hey, look, look, same number of boats, is worse in Hilo. First time I look at it, it's a breakwater. You guys got boats and breakwater, so I don't know what it is. But at least I can tell you just plain boats without a big breakwater. Kaului has a breakwater, Lahaina has a breakwater, but maybe it's so complex, it's the breakwater and the boats, or the breakwater and the Wailoa rivers. Because we have rivers too, but without a breakwater, I guess we dilute it and we don't even look. I don't know.
I have some guests here that are catching the flight, but I did not want them to leave the room without introducing who you are, so that you can see their faces, and just know that we want to be able to have a relationship with talking to you, because you are the Department of Health. This is Neil Mukai, who is our water quality monitoring person for the whole entire island. So we've been Neil has come to a lot of my meetings in Keaukaha because we wanted to know, certain places, how were they being monitored as well as county. And so we found out that there is only one monitor quality person. So we had submitted a bill or proposal to legislation last year to have another East Hawaii monitor person, because Neil is stationed in Kona. So I wanted to ask you, before you go, did you know that we did that? Propose financing for another water quality person. Alec. Okay, wait, this is Alec Wong. Alec Wong is with Clean Water, monitoring. But program manager. And that's Alec Wong. And this is Myron Honda, who handles monitoring, the head honchos. He's the head honcho. This is Mark Tomomitsu, who handles all wastewater NPDES permits.
No, Clean Water does that.
Clean Water does that. You cannot go without introducing what you do. I'm serious. We're not going to shoot you. We're just going to introduce you.
Anyway, I don't think I have time to introduce myself, to tell you everything what I'm doing. But anyway, thank you for the invitation for today. And whatever the information we collect today, definitely we will take it back to whatever those committee. And whatever your suggestions, that's why the legislature, they said the deadline is 2050. I won't be around at that time. But anyway, whatever those information I think is very useful. And then we can take it back and then we can discuss about that. Just like a lot of people suggest is go one size fits all. We don't know. Right? That's why right now we said the deadline is so many years away from now, and then we have the time, to make all these maybe changes, adjustments. Right? All these may be technology to come up, maybe give an answer about our questions. So definitely tonight, whatever we discuss, I don't mark it, put it down in his writing, and I just listening. I just try to digest, what's going on, like how can I help, maybe nice. Some of the suggestions is change food, right? That may not be that simple, but we will look at it. Like a lot of that piece may be related to change of the plumbing code, right? We cannot just do it, right? We need to go to it. Right, we try to do it in Honolulu, we try to, push for that for I don't know how many years. And they still never change it. Even though they put it on their writing, but they still never get approval. Right? So there's so many things. Yes, we understand, all this frustration, but sometimes it's not that easy, to change it, overnight. I hope that everybody can understand, I know the frustrations. I've been working for the state for so many years. I have so many frustrations, but unfortunately I get to carry it, I don't know how to do it. Sometimes, that's why a lot of times they come and ask me how to do it. I don't know. Every day is a new day to me. right? So, but anyway, we have to go, we have to catch the fight. If not, maybe some of you may be going to give us a housing tonight. I love Hilo. Actually, I've been in Hilo before, 40 years ago. And then I still love Hilo. But, yeah. Thank you. I will come back there anytime.
Love you too, so you're gonna have to come here to these people more often. Am I correct? No scared, because I know you guys are scared for come. I know. But
I can hear.
Several times I was here the last time.
Okay, right.
You're right, I was here. The next time you bring Sina. With you too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can we leave a business card?
Yes.
I got a business card and beside
Oh, the book.
the book.
Okay, so we'll share the information.
I wanted to tell you, I appreciate the Department of Health for coming. I wrote a letter to Bruce Anderson.
You know that the state is so poor, we don't have budget for those. I work for the state, my own business card.
So we really appreciate you, and please don't let this be the last time. You know, we have some people here that are very, very concerned about water quality and financing, which is something that one of the problems. And I think we need to discuss this one. Okay, everybody. Okay. Just wanted to let everybody know that if you have any questions, I'm going to call you.
Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much. Yay.
Thank you, Liam. All right. Dr. Peng, thank you. Okay, so tomorrow.
Big Island, how long have you had rain catchment? That doesn't meet DOH standards. But we had to come up with rules because the VA guys wanted to buy a house, get rain catchment on Big Island. Okay, so it's not magic. The other thing is, it's wonderful if you reduce this whole problem to nothing more than gray water. That's the agree on the solids. Gray water, you worried about that? How come I see people showering at the beach bar? Hey, look, gray water. How come we tell people rinse off the mud from your collar? Hey, gray water. It's all relative. Now, the only thing I can't solve is urine. But you and I know real well that he ain't wearing the pants.
I have trees all over the ranch.
Okay, I'm going to have to stick something in here before we leave. Before we leave, one of the reasons why I called this meeting is because of the long haul on our Department of Hawaiian Homelands. We had a presentation to the county in 2017 of the use of Department of Hawaiian Homelands for a lot of our facilities. And so we found in data collection that a lot of our waste is on Hawaiian Homelands. So, even on Oahu. And I know you know that. And I know some of you know that.
Environmental racism.
And so I'm going to bring this up because it is my concern of other facilities that are on Hawaiian Homelands that I have raised as an environmental injustice project. So when it comes to science, before we talk about science, we talk about the people that have had to endure, especially on this island, the burden of the disproportionate burden of these facilities being put near a Hawaiian community. So before you leave, I wanted to make sure that you all knew that that is the reason why I had this meeting. Because it is something that we're going to have to work on. Because we've had families living next to a sewage plant for over 50 years. And who have not only had to endure physical impacts, but psychological. And I'm here because it impacted me all my life. So one of the things that we need to also include in this is the psychological impacts that it had on a particular group of people that lived and carry the burden for everybody. Today, I took a tour with Bill, and while going through the tour, I realized that the processing plant that we have now was nowhere like the one that was put right across the street of our Hawaiian people. And so, knowing that there is a progress in the cleaning of the sewage, we don't want it there. We've had enough of that disproportionate burden. We still would like the state and the county to think about putting it somewhere else. You know, I mean, because, and to help our Hawaiians pay for it. Because we, you know, we need to be compensated for the years that we have. Today, I saw Pohakuloa's doo come all the way down to our plant. And that just kind of hit me to say how many other septic tank trucks come from around the island. The increase of sewage that will come out in Puhi Bay. So, just that. Anybody else has questions for me? And the nitrate levels that are very high in Hilo. Okay. Anything else?
The other thing that impacts your community terribly is the airport. And there's so much that can be done there to decrease that impact. I was at the elementary school setting us up on Friday, and I couldn't believe the amount of traffic, total unnecessary traffic, going over Keaukaha that doesn't need to be there. And that can decrease the impact to your community, both Panaeva and Keaukaha. And it's doable. There's no reason it can't be done.
This is the other thing. If you look in this room, how many people are from Keaukaha in this room? Besides those two? Besides those two? It's going to take the whole entire Keaukaha to stand up and voice their opinion about this. Now, one of the things that they're very, very worried about is getting kicked out of that area because they've had PTSD with that happening before with the airport. So, if anybody's listening to me in this video, I really believe that our Hawaiian people that are impacted by this should be here today, tomorrow, and voicing their opinion, and they're not. I'm sorry, you're not here. And that is a huge problem. So when I say about Hawaiians benefiting for this, who's going to pay for it? Except, for the conversion into the pipes. Our tutus are paying for fees. They're not even on the pipes. Now, all of these things are concerns. They should be here. My association presidents should be here from DHHL, and they're not. So that is a huge problem. I just wanted to bring that up. Okay.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Terry. And I love that, we can talk about things that are hard to say. We've waited a long time to say some things, and maybe too long, and I think that we have to say all of what we want, because there's pushback coming all over the place, and so you gotta say, this is what I want. And, my focus for this meeting was not just to raise issues and problems and blame or anything. It was to find solutions. So, I think that Terry, one of the things she didn't say is she's actually working closely with a Congress member to try and find money to implement some of the solutions. It's not just, I want this, no, she's working to make it happen. And if it doesn't happen, I think that she's a very reasonable person. She's trying to find avenues to get really to the end goal, which is healthier people. And really, who doesn't want that? Everybody really is trying to get to the same place, even the DOH people. So we're all here for the same goal. And so thank you to the Director of Environmental Management. You've really been through a lot today. I'm so sorry that, it's hard. You took a hard job. strong and being kind, honestly. And thank you so much, Tracy, too. I think your PowerPoint really highlighted a lot of issues today in Hilo. And science we would not know if not for you. So thank you. So thank you again to everybody who came. Tomorrow we're going to start at 9. Tomorrow's about ideas. No more presentations, no more science, no more whatever, just thoughts. Thoughts from people who, like Lauren, who do projects on the ground that are alternatives to wastewater treatment models and other things, that people have been doing in the community to try to make a difference. So tomorrow from 9 until about lunchtime, and then we'll just have talk story after that. But thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Barbara Lively is going to help us, write our ideas tomorrow during the Q&A. But I really appreciate all here. Anybody else has a question before I leave? Yes, you can.
I just wanted to say that about 3 or 4 years ago, actually, when Bill first started, you held another very similar meeting that I attended. And I was so impressed by the fact that you got, such a vast array of resources, both state and county, to the table. And you said something that was really profound that probably nobody's ever really kind of put together. But you encapsulated all of the industrial entities that are within Keaukaha that impact you so gravely. And I hope that you start off tomorrow by telling everybody what they are. You know what they are, right? All of the lists. It's huge. It's
Sewage is not only the issue in Keaukaha. We house about 7 TRI companies, toxic release inventory companies, and by 2014 called EPA because at least 7 were non-compliant to EPA standards for decades. So how do you repair that? This is pertinent because we're now having law forcing us to make decisions. Really, to me, that's really backwards. I could say something else, but wouldn't you do a feasibility study first before you start forcing people, on the impacts, is what I'm thinking. Because right now you're dealing with problems that they came up with, and how are you going to do it? Even they couldn't come up with that, this determination. Okay, go ahead, you can tell them.
So I'm curious, is there anyone here from the water department? They're integral players in here. I know there are some of us that were at Hilo, I think it was last month. The state has drilled wells all around Mauna Kea, and they have found that we have a far greater water source at about 1,200 feet down instead of 200 feet down where most of the county wells are at. And so I won't say we can eliminate a lot of the problems, but we could get some time if we extended those wells down to that 1,200 foot level where the water actually is pressured up and you're not pumping it up. So there's less cost there after the initial drilling. But that, at least in my mind anyway, it makes the municipal water much more safer.
Question?
I just want to make a statement.
Okay, statement, yes.
Just that everything we listened to tonight was never caused by Hawaiians. That's all.
That's true. We weren't the problem, I'm sorry, and I think that the remedy should at least address that. Yeah. Okay, we see you all tomorrow. And if you have any questions to ask Bill, we got 2 seconds before he lines it outside the door. And seriously, I'm so sorry about being late. Are you going to